Exploring St. Louis's rich history with Renegade StL, next on City Corner. Sarah Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. There's no doubt that St. Louis has a rich history behind every landmark, every historic building. Even underneath the very streets we walk on and drive on, there's a story. But you probably haven't thought about St. Louis history in the same way that our next guests have. It's a pleasure to have Renegade StL in studio. They are historians who have created something really original, fresh, original tours of St. Louis architecture, history, historical neighborhoods, and so much more. And I just am so thrilled to have you here. Let me properly introduce you. First, we have Amanda Ball-Clark, CEO and founder, and Elizabeth Eikmann, who is the COO of Renegade StL. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was saying to you before we started the show that I love history. I was a history major, and I love that you've taken your passion and love for history and turned it into a business, and a business that's really quite successful. You've got so many tours. How did this all start?
This started 7 years ago as a way for, as a volunteer tour guide with some different organizations, and I kind of had this feeling it could be done differently and with a little more energy, and I had some opportunities come up that I took, and it all grew from there.
Okay, and what's with the name Renegade StL? I have to ask.
Well, I went with what I had, which is I wanted to do it differently. I had a different take on history, I had a different energy just in general, and a renegade. To me, a renegade is someone who's doing it intentionally and is not just rogue and doing things crazy, but is just can't help but be different.
And so we should really highlight like what's different about this. I mean, I think the thing that stood out to me is you have these themed tours that are done in a way that aren't traditionally done. You're not saying, hey, we're going to go walk through the Hill or Carondelet or Dutchtown. You're saying, hey, we've got these themes. One of them is even, I've got a list of them. You've got the grand scheme of things. You've got something called the badass babes. You've got something disasters and catastrophes. So how did you decide to put this together more thematically and stick with this kind of renegade theme?
Yeah, I think our very first themed tour was the Badass Babes tour. Is that right? Yeah. So we both knew that there's such rich women's history in St. Louis, and there are often, these like little characters that pop up. We know these certain women's names and the little sort of footnote about them in history. But it just seemed like a no-brainer for us to find all these women and to actually pinpoint them to a place, a location that we could go to and visit and see what it had become today, if it was still there. So, women's history was sort of our first major, and then it sort of like took off from there. So you came up with disasters and catastrophes.
Because you've got to know where all the disasters happen. And so, we're going to start showing some photos too, so people kind of have an idea. You're going to, locations that a lot of people recognize, perhaps some that don't. So, how much, when you're talking about, there the two of you are and from the contemporary, but when you're talking about theming these up, how much research do you have to do, or how much of it is stuff you already know?
So much research. I instantly think of the one that we have called Meet Your Maker. It's all about manufacturing history of St. Louis. And that one is one of our most popular right now, the bus tours. And that one took a really long time. I went through on Google Maps and followed Broadway all the way from Carondelet to the North Riverfront and just drilled down into every single business to find the story behind the business. And I stitched that together to make the tour.
And I think it's a way, what I like what you're doing is that you're looking at history in not such a linear or chronological way. It's not like, okay, this is we're going to do a tour and this is kind of what happened, as much as it is thematically, and you go everywhere. So, when you're doing the ones, we've got some photos where it's down on the Mississippi River. Which tour is that? Which one are you covering for that?
All of them.
All of them. On the south side is Bellry Park, appears in a few. But if it's a spot on the north side, it might be the Mary Meacham Freedom Crossing, which shows up on our Babes tour. So Mary Meacham was a free woman of color who in 1855 was actually captured, which is why we have record of her story, helping a group of enslaved St. Louisans cross the Mississippi River into Illinois. So we actually take our group there, we get off the bus, stand on the banks, and people are amazed, number one, at how close the other side of the river is, how close Illinois is there, but then they see the water rushing, and it's sort of like this surreal moment where they realize that there were people swimming across that river trying to get to freedom. So it's another way to contextualize that story, to actually be there in that specific place. And it's a place that no one would go on their own.
Yeah, when we're going to that spot, it's always a fun experience on the bus because we pass the water treatment plant, we pass all of these places, and everyone on the bus is,
where are we
going?
They're always like, should we be worried?
But and then it's an incredible experience once they're off.
What do you think? I mean, there's a lot of buzz around what you guys have done. I mean, I've heard you on the radio and I've seen the coverage that you've gotten. I mean, what do you think is really sticking with people about this particular experience that you provide for them?
I think it's the love of St. Louis, and not just the love of, not a nostalgic love. We always joke that, or I always joke that I don't owe anything to toasted ravioli or Provel because I didn't grow up here. So I got to fall in love with pieces of St. Louis that had maybe been forgotten, or, it's not just the Arch, and it's not just Forest Park. There's a whole other city with a giant amount of American history, not just St. Louis history, American history, and even pre-American, and being able to share that enthusiasm, I think is big.
Do you think, because you're both, neither of you are from St. Louis originally, is that correct? Or
you
are from St. Louis,
I have everything to owe to toasted ravioli and local cheese.
I was going to say, do you see the differences of, I mean, you both clearly love the city and love the city's history, but do you notice a difference of how you sort of approach dissecting St. Louis? Because I do think if you're from here, you think about things a little bit perhaps differently, or take things for granted perhaps, or I don't know. You tell me, do you see a difference in how you approach things?
I think you look at history differently.
Yeah, I think the difference comes into like our individual interests, historical interests. We each bring different things to the Renegade table, so to speak. So the things that I care about and I'm passionate about, Amanda's like,
Well, that
she knows way more about them, and so I defer.
That is a great segue, because I really wanted this. Like I said, we've got these photos of the different tours that you have, so people can really get a feel for it. But I also wanted to kind of just pick your brains and do these like rapid fire, like history, St. Louis history questions. And since you both like different things, I thought we could do that. So here's my first one: if you could time travel back to any year, but you would be in St. Louis, but just to have that experience, what year would that be?
I'm gonna go 1849.
Okay.
I'm gonna wear a mask, and I'm not gonna drink the water.
Yeah,
but
that was a terrible year.
Terrible year. I want to get my facts straight. So.
Yeah.
And why 1849?
1849 is a terrible year in St. Louis history. We had a massive flood that year. Our city, the core of the city, burned to the ground. Thanks to the White Cloud steamboat, which, if you're going to burn a city to the ground, is a fantastic name for a steamboat. It's also a year when a significant amount of people in St. Louis died of cholera, which is, I don't want to be there for that, but I would love to experience just what
massive upheaval, huge changes in the city's landscape.
There was political corruption. Just, it was a pretty pivotal
That
year.
was a big.
I'd love to watch it from across the river.
Yeah, there you go. A hot air balloon up above the city, away from.
Again, with some bottled water.
Yeah. And that would explain, I saw on your social media pages, you've got one of the prints, I think, or not, but from the fire. Was that not one of the sketches or drawings?
Yeah. So there were some, they did some like map renderings of all the buildings that were destroyed after the fire. There's some like lithographs and sketches. So we like to, especially on our social media, highlight some of these like cool moments in history and actually go into the archive and find these images or objects and share them with people who otherwise also wouldn't find themselves in an archive, or think that it's not accessible or would.
And the thing that we do with all of our tours and with history is, well, who cares if all those things happen in 1849? They affect us now. They affect the fact that we have one of the first modern sewer systems. They affect our building code, and the fact that we have this beautiful red brick city was a building code that came out of that fire. And that's what we do on our tours, is, well, what does it matter? We're not just going to tell you all the information we know, because we know a lot, but we're not going to do that, but we're also going to tell you why it matters to you now.
No, and I think that's really important. I think that's kind of like one of the key things in St. Louis is you can go through, and I mean, I know you both love architecture, and point out all the buildings and say, this is a beautiful building, but there is a story behind it, and there's things that impact us to today. I think that's such a great point to pick up. Elizabeth, what were you going to say for your year that you would go back?
I think that for just like a little moment, like maybe 15 minutes. I wouldn't want to stay here for too long. In 1873, a woman named Virginia Minor, along with the help of her husband, sued for the right to vote. She believed that the 14th Amendment actually gave women the right to vote, and this is 1873, so almost 50 years before the 19th Amendment passes, and she did that in the old courthouse in downtown St. Louis. So I would have loved to be sitting in that courtroom to just, hear those discussions and see what everyone was like and what they said. But after that, I would want to sort of hightail it out of there. I think I wouldn't want to stay too long.
But yeah, that's a good one. What do you think is probably one of the most, before we go to our break, but the most interesting or perhaps lesser known facts that you tell people on your tours that they just, that they had no idea? I mean, it really shocks people.
That the city was the 5th largest city in the United States at one time.
Yeah.
And when they were built, and at that time, the architecture, the infrastructure, they were building for a world-class city. And I think that people need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, that's good. Were you going to add something to that?
Well, I mean, this is more general, but the best thing that we hear on our tours is when people who have lived in St. Louis for 20 years say, I've never been here before, or I never knew that about my city. So it's just these little, it might not be like this huge, crazy fact or something, but it's just taking them somewhere that they've never been, and they've spent all their lives in St. Louis. And getting to hear that is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's neat. I mean, are most of the people that you give tours, is it equally of people who are from out of town or St. Louisans?
Overwhelming majority St. Louisans.
Really? And you do corporate as well. Like people book you for like corporate outings for their
corporate
teams.
Outings specific themed to their industry. We do, education, a lot of school groups of all ages.
That's really, really neat. I want to get into, I know you do museum consulting. There's a lot of things I want to get into that I think we have in our second half. But for now, I've got some information there for you on the screens to take a look at. If you want to do a tour with Renegade StL, we've put their description there, but email info@renegadestl.com or call the number on your screen. Great social media, and your website's fantastic as well. I love how you mix the historical images with some of the tours, and we're going to show you some of those when we get back. But we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to have more with Renegade StL right after this. Stay with us.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome back to City Corner. Today we're talking with Renegade StL. They do offbeat, original, fresh tours of St. Louis, really highlighting and really going in on the history. You're both historians, and I loved what you're doing. You've gotten a lot of buzz about these tours that you're doing. Just because you don't walk through the neighborhood, you're really going deep into historical facts. I kind of want to pick things up so people really understand, and I'm going to just go off and name some of how you've themed these tours. We've got downtown history and architecture. We've got true crime, which I want to get into. Cheers to Soulard, Forest Park, the Renegade StL. We've got all these different ones. You do Queer St. Louis, which is a theme that you're even doing one this month for Pride Month. So tell me about some more of these. Like, tell me about true crime. What is somebody going to experience on the true crime tour?
Yeah, true crime is brand new, and it's not official yet. We're kind of announcing it. It's a big announcement. We did a test version of it this weekend that was phenomenal, and it was really fun. But it was a challenging one because, to do a true crime tour in a city that has one of the highest murder rates in the United States, you don't want to be disrespectful of that reality. And so it was a challenge to put those two things side by side. But we also discussed, went into the history of true crime, period. Like, why do people care about murder? And we talked about, the bus of people thought they were doing something new, and I was like, nope, you're so medieval. Like, people have been doing this since the 13th century. So, we talked about the history of crime obsession and murder obsession.
And how long does it really, I kind of asked you this a little bit in the first segment, but when you're coming up with a new theme for a tour, I mean, how much is based on feedback that you've gotten from other patrons that you've had, or is it your idea and you say, I'm going to dedicate another 4 weeks to researching this and I want to put it together? Is it kind of a combination of them both?
I mean, maybe a combination. Yeah, like the true crime one was sort of like a lot of people, like Amanda said, are obsessed with true crime and they ask about it all the time. So, it's like, all right, we'll do it, we'll take that on. But some of the other ones like disasters or the Babes tour, they were born out of our own passions and interests, and we knew that other people would be interested. So it is sort of a balance, I would say, between like responding to what we know people are interested in and what we're passionate about.
And she and I have so much fun dreaming up events and dreaming up ideas that the magic happens there. So we've come up with some good stuff.
I mentioned that, and we're going to put some photos to add to our slides, which are historical photos that if you follow your social media accounts, you do have archival photos that you pull in there. And I think what you've done, which is really cool. There's the trolley photo, but
that's us driving that trolley.
Tell me about this, where you've got this great feed of all these photos from your tours, but what really stands out to me is just how you mix in these kind of archival photos. What's sort of the meaning behind that?
Yeah. Well, on one end, we want to show people that history is fun, and that it doesn't have to be like, your grandma's history lesson.
Unless your grandma's cool.
Yeah, unless your grandma is cool, then let's do it. So, those like sort of sillier ones where we put ourselves inside, I think that in like a serious way, it emulates what we try to do on our tours, which is actually insert contemporary people into these historical moments and tell them a story and get them connected. So we sort of do that in a fun way by inserting ourselves in historical images. But, it's people love to see.
Yes. To see, like when you're looking at
the archive. Yeah.
The old world. I mean, and because it's amazing because you think about it now, and that's the old Woolworth building, and it's like, what's there now? I mean, do you hear that probably a lot from people for their feedback?
And when you go to Grand Center, you'll see the Kranzberg Art Center and the Big Brothers Big Sisters building, and that's what that is. So, they pass by it every single time they go to the Fox Theater, but maybe they never took a moment to actually think about the building that's a block away on the corner. And, people are really interested in it. They love to see where the city has been and imagine where it's going. And images and maps are one way to do that.
And we like to not just say, well, this is this building and it sits here.
Right.
Yay.
But to tell a story about it. And, this is a building that sits here, but this one really awesome thing happened there. I mean, the Woolworth building in particular, I was reading a story just recently. We're preparing for a new tour that we're doing of Grand Center, the grand scheme of things. And there was a SLU student who, in the 1940s, so this is before like Woolworth counter and lunch counter sit-ins are happening in a popular way across the country, but she did like a solo protest and went to the counter at Woolworth in that building and sat there all day. She got permission from the owner and waged her own little protest and took up her space in the building. And, that's not a story that has gotten national attention because it was just one woman, and she only did it for a few days at a time. But nonetheless, it's something that connects that one building to this huge story that we've we've heard so many times, it has become so important to civil rights history.
And I think what you're doing is important because our memory we do forget. People do forget, I mean, over time. I mean, I think you're speaking of an area too, like in the Mill Creek, what used to be Mill Creek, which is now, you know, with St. Louis University and just that area. And that was thousands and thousands of people living there. And now you just would have no idea what it used to be. And I think what you're doing is really quite important. I do want to highlight too, you work with museums, you do museum consulting. So this isn't just like every day you're like, here's my list of people I'm giving a tour to and going, you're doing a lot of hard work. Talk about the museum consulting that you do.
So that piece is a big growing piece for us. And that comes from them coming to us and looking for programming assistance and ways to engage audiences that weren't otherwise going to go to the museum and go to something, because we're engaging audiences that wouldn't otherwise go on a tour.
Right.
So we're extending that to museums, to anyone that needs help programming and engaging people.
No, I think that's really special. And you work with schools as well. We should point that out too.
Yeah.
So if somebody's watching this who's a teacher or is the headmaster of a school, they can reach out to you and you do school themed trips? Or?
We have done trips for everywhere from a preschool class to seniors, or to high school students.
And college students, universities. So
we know how to tell the kid in the back to stop making out. It only happened once at one school.
What do you think, I mean, when you're doing with, like, let's say seniors, I mean, what is, or high school students, I mean, what do you feel that they're most interested in, or what kind of really sparks or clicks with them when you're on the tour with them?
Just how the history matters to them now.
Yeah.
Because so much of history can be told to them, and it mattered to somebody, but what does it matter to them?
Or taking those like intangible facts that they're learning in their classroom and showing like, hey, this piece of legislation that you learned about was actually important because it made this building right here get built. And so being able to see like, oh yeah, it's not so like ambiguous or amorphous, it's physical and we have it and it impacted our city and our citizens right here. And guess what, it only happened 40 years ago or something like that.
Talk about like when you're on the tour, what's kind of, just so people who are watching this who haven't done one, I mean, just kind of walk through what the actual experience is like. We should clarify, you do bus tours as well as walking tours. So somebody goes to your site, they find a theme that they like, whether it's the Central West End or a neighborhood or something specific, then what kind of walk us through, like what's the feel, what's the energy like, who else is going to be there?
If it's a public tour, it's going to be a lot of people from lots of different places, whether in St. Louis or out. When the tour gets started, we are going to stealthily figure out what everybody's into that's in the group, and then we're going to go from there. And there's no script. You can go on her tour one week of downtown, my tour the next week, and it's two different tours.
And then go on mine the week after, and it'll be different from when you went on it 2 weeks ago.
Because it's a different group of people.
Yeah.
So we are really responsive to that. We train our guides to be responsive. Challenge ourselves
Meeting
to be
people where they're at and what they're interested in is really important and makes the experience so much more fun and interesting for everyone.
And we're known to, in the middle of a tour, abandon what the normal route is, the expected route. I'm like, what? I don't think this group really cares about what, not that they don't care, but maybe they're responding to something more, and we'll take them a totally different way.
Well, I was going to do this, but nah.
Is there like one consistent feedback that you hear from all the people that go on your tours? What do you hear the most in terms of what they're saying when they?
I think what she said earlier about had no idea.
I never knew this existed. Never knew this existed. Or I've driven down this road every single day on my way to work, but never walked down it. And when you walk down it, I saw all these amazing things that I never knew were there. So and I think that's like, it's great feedback because that means we're doing our jobs well, I think, to one end, but it also shows that like people in St. Louis are so passionate about their city, about the city's history, and they want to know what's there. They want to be shown things that they've never seen before. So it's really fun to be part of a team that gets to do that.
And we're not just stuck in the past in the sense that we also address what's happening right now in this neighborhood, what great things are happening or challenges that they have. We're big on that as well, like what development is coming, what looking forward as well.
Do you guys have any, like, just back to those kind of like rapid fire questions, like do you have favorites? Like what's your favorite, would you say, your landmark if you had to pick one, or a favorite building? That's a hard one. St. Louis has a lot of beautiful.
I'm sure I can guess what it is.
I'm going to say the water tower. I'm going to say the Bissell Point to surprise
that
you.
was a surprise.
Bissell Point, yeah, the water tower up in College Hill. You know, we have those three. We have 3 water towers in St. Louis. Most everyone is familiar with the one at Grand and 44.
Yes.
But there's 2 more in North St. Louis.
And what makes it your favorite, or what?
Because it is such a surprise.
Yeah.
It's such a gem. It's gorgeous. I love it. Just period as a building, as a structure. It's beautiful. And it really does define that thing where we're a special city and we have neat things here. There are 7 of those water towers left in the United States, and we have 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
What about you?
I think one of my favorite places, it should be a landmark, and maybe it will be one day, is Tilly's Corner. It's on the north side, and there was a building there. The building that stands at that corner now is no longer, it's different from what was originally there, but in the late 1940s, a woman named Lily Velma Pearson started her own business. She was widowed, a mother of 5 children, and came to the north side and opened a corner store, which she ran with the help of family and friends, I'm sure, but single-handedly for the most part for 40 years. And now on that site is her granddaughter, who she runs Tilly's Corner, which is what she named it. And there's community garden there. They do like outreach and programming and things. So people are, number one, shocked to hear that a business survived on the corner in that neighborhood for 40 years. And how that exact space is being used and serving the community in a lot of the same ways that it once did.
And that's a good example, because we invite Carla, her granddaughter, on the bus, and she will hop on the bus and talk about what's happening.
She brings these photographs of her grandmother in the store. It's really great. And that's a place that a lot of people are like, wow, I wish I would have known about this.
And it brings up the point, too, that that's a history that's not ours.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
And that's someone that we work with to help.
Yep. She tells it, and
On my last kind of closing, we just have a little under a minute, but just I do believe history teaches us these kind of life lessons, and you're sort of in it day to day, kind of living somewhat like not reliving the past, but bringing those stories, but obviously in the present with the people that you're giving tours to. What is this kind of like life lesson that you feel you're reminded of every day in the work that you do?
People are always people.
Yeah.
It's almost like they can't stop being people. And so history doesn't just repeat itself. It is a living thing that is, because we keep doing it, because we're people. Yeah. That's what I love.
And that it matters. Knowing that history and knowing that people are people matters, because it's defined who we are today, how we got here, and then also sort of gives us a sense that we have agency in terms of determining who we'll be in the future and what the world will be like.
Thank you so much. I love how you guys also finish each other's sentences. You're right there on the same place. I love what you're doing, and just keep up the great work. I think it's so great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. And there's the information, Renegade StL. Go to their website, sign up, do a tour. It's so interesting. You're going to learn so much about St. Louis history that you probably did not know, and you're going to experience it in a very different way and in such an original way. Again, renegadestl.com, and thank you both again for being here. And thank you at home for watching STL TV, and keep it right here on STL TV. Experience St. Louis.